Oh, hello everyone. Welcome to the round table of the Outstanding Book Award winners for 2025 for ATHE, the Association for Theatre in Higher Education. I am Evi Stamatiou. I am from the University of East London, and I was the chair of this year's subcommittee. I am delighted to introduce you to Petra Kuppers, one of the winners of last year's awards for her book Ecosoma, who was also part of the committee this year. And then to this year's winners for innovative achievement, Taryn Lin Min Chun for revolutionary stagecraft, theater technology and politics in modern China. Then for pedagogical achievement, Andy Head and Jill Marie Bradbury for the book Staging Deaf and Hearing Theatre Productions, a Practical Guide. And for scholarly achievement, Bethany Hughes for Redface, Race, Performance and Indigeneity. My congratulations to the winners, and I look forward to discussing with everyone today.
So these are the two amazing books that got our shortlistings. And this is Broderick Chow's Muscle Work, Physical Culture and the Performance of Masculinity, and Sarah Sadler, Performing Corporate Bodies, Multinational Theatre in Global India. Both of which are a complete delight to read. That was something that was very important to us on the committee to think about our own delight as scholars in reading. What is not just opening up our mind to topic areas and archives, but also what are ways of communicating to us that are innovative and exciting. And you will hear some of that in a minute from our winners as well. They certainly all chose ways of communicating their research that are just super exciting and interesting. And the same is true of Chow and Sadler. So Broderick Chow tells us about male physical culture, and he uses his own embodied path to muscularity to engage reparative modes of becoming and being masculine beyond whiteness and heteronormativity. It's this queer path through archival ephemera, which was just really delightful to witness. So I hope you all will read Muscle Work. Sarah Sadler was also a fascinating read, a really lively written, very vignette-based, vivid vignette-based work about how corporate theater works, how applied theater works in India in multinational firms. And it's just a really exciting account of both how capitalism and theater go together, and of course, how then actors within this corporate theater employ humor to navigate systems of power, to really to engage with and change what they are presented with. So two wonderful books that I hope you both will read, that you all will read.
Hello. So first of all, thank you so much. Again, my name is Taryn Chun, and I'm author of Revolutionary Stagecraft. So a huge thanks to Evi and Petra and the whole committee for this honor, as well as to my team at University of Michigan Press and Yale Prezant, who was my developmental editor on the project. Revolutionary Stagecraft explores interrelations among theater, technology, and politics in modern China with a focus on the decades between the 1920s and the 1970s. And basically, in it, I'm trying to triangulate among three significant phenomena. So, first of all, the technological modernization of the stage apparatus in China through things like the introduction of electric lighting, the mechanization of stage equipment, sound amplification systems, which began in the late 19th century for the most part. Second, I'm interested in the tasking of theater across genres with a need to contribute to political revolution and to spreading ideological messages. And third, the politicization of technology itself in China, including, for instance, the association of technological development with national progress and the marking of certain technologies as either ideological good or bad objects based on things like their place of origin. So one example of that real quickly is in the 1950s, technology transfer from the Soviet Union to the People's Republic of China was considered ideologically correct, at least until the Sino-Soviet split, but technologies that were associated with Western bourgeois capitalism were not. And over the course of the book, I advanced several main arguments. So the first is that in modern China, stage technology provides us with the set of material, dramaturgical, and epistemological connections between theater and the broader waves of technological modernization that occurred in China from the mid-19th century onward. Second, that the theory and practice of using stage technology relates intimately to the political and aesthetic goals of directors, designers, and technicians who were involved in generating, disseminating, and implementing this knowledge. And finally, that stage technology also links theater to realms of technical knowledge production circulation more broadly, as well as larger technical systems of ideology, economics, and culture. So again, I do hope that everyone will read this and become interested in learning more about modern Chinese theater. But beyond that, I also hope that it will sort of crack open a door to a new way of using published and archival sources read alongside scripts and the more typical tools of the theater historian or historiographer.
Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here. Again, my name is Andy Head, and I am one of the co-writers of Staging Deaf and Hearing Theater Productions with Jill Bradbury here as my partner in crime. So to give a bit of an overview of the book. This book is, as the subtitle indicates, it's a how-to manual. It's for people who are interested in doing this kind of work, of bringing deaf and hearing artists together to create plays for deaf and hearing audiences, and are not quite sure how or where to begin. And that's the situation that I found myself in when I started working at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. And so Jill and I thought that, we here at NTID have spent years and years of trial and error, making mistakes, having a lot of successes, and we can take all of those best practices and lessons that we have learned and put them into this book so that the readers don't have to make our mistakes. They can have a much smoother beginning to their process, and they don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So it's really about how to go step by step through the process, using the book as a map to guide your way through certain checkpoints towards a successful production for the artists and the audiences. And so a couple of big points from the book we're going to go through. And one of those is encouraging production teams to work towards inclusivity by considering deaf perspectives at every step. So in the book, we talk a lot about accessibility, and accessibility is incredibly important. It's one of the major principles that we talk about, that everyone in the room should have access to that high quality communication that's going on. Everyone should be there and understand what's happening back and forth, whether it's a production meeting or a rehearsal or the play performance itself. But striving for inclusivity goes beyond that. And that means that you're not only providing access to a space, but you're allowing everyone around the table to participate evenly. That the room is open for ideas to come. It doesn't matter if they're coming from a deaf team member or a hearing team member, but everyone is involved in that collaborative process.
Thank you, Andy, for that great overview of the book. I would just highlight a few things. The first is that even though this is a practical guide, it is also deeply theoretical. We propose a spectrum for analyzing and evaluating integrated deaf and hearing productions that is based on artistic and access principles. And so our argument is that if the production does not provide an accessible, equitable experience for deaf audience members as it does for hearing, then it has essentially failed in its purpose. And so we go into a variety of examples of production and talk about the different models that they have adapted to the integration and what was successful and what were some of the challenges in these different productions, to give examples, specific examples, to help people understand what works and what does not work. We're both deaf and hearing audiences. We have discussed those models from double casting to shadow interpreting what they look like, what are the positives and the negatives of each approach. So we really try to go in depth in terms of the framework as well as providing the practical tips. So it's a book that has broad applicability to those who are doing integrated deaf and hearing theater, as well as to people who are interested in disability studies or just generally interested in more information about deaf and hearing integrated theater.
Lito. Sahochafoya Bethany Hughes, Chatasia, okay? Hello, my name is Bethany Hughes. I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. As we are recording this, I am coming to you from central Oklahoma, not my childhood home on the Choctaw Reservation, but the part of Oklahoma that is ancestral homelands of the Comanche, Wichita, Kiowa, Kickapoo, and Osage. And I am here to talk about my book, Redface. First of all, thank you so much to the jurors and to ATHE for sponsoring this and for the labor and care that they took approaching all of the entrants this year. So my book, Redface, Race, Performance, and Indigeneity, was published by New York University Press in 2024. And the big idea that I want people to take away from this is that Redface is a collaborative curatorial process by which audiences and artists construct a legibly Indian body on stage. And by Indian, I mean very specifically a racialized, generic, homogenous identity for those indigenous to the continent of North America. And so this process of creating this book and writing this book was years of research on American theatrical history and the ways that I will refer to them as Native American characters and sometimes as Indian. Indian is the more generic term that I use throughout the book. How did Native American characters, how did Indians show up on US stages, and what kinds of knowledge about natives and Indians did Americans possess and create during these time periods? So how did I go about trying to articulate what it means to be redface? There's a wealth of knowledge about blackface and blackface minstrelsy, and there's growing interest in the ways that other racialized communities experienced and were constructed and responded to their representation on the US stage. And so I decided to focus upon Native Americans. So I start the book with early 19th century sort of originary performances of Native American characters. So these include Edwin Forrest in the role of Metamora. There's two images on the screen of that, an early painting of him, and then a later photograph of him in costume. And so I look at stage directions, at scripts, at makeup manuals, at amateur theatrical guides about, plans for school and educational theater to try to build a story about how the Indian, as a racialized figure, appears on the US stage, is modified, sort of solidifies into identifiable categories, and then is perpetually drawn upon to create and sustain this character of the racialized Indian on stage. The second chapter looks at Pocahontas plays. So you'll see an image from an 1808 play about Pocahontas, which happens to be my favorite Pocahontas play. You can ask me about that when you see me in person. And the way that gender and race are constituted in and through red-face practices on the American stage. The last point I will make about the book is that there is an experimental essay woven among the pages. It's called Hunoshi'inla, which in my ancestral language, Chaka Anumpa, means another path. And it's an essay that provides an embodied rehearsal for what I'm calling upon audiences and artists alike to do. What would it mean to read bodies differently? And what would it mean to pay attention to different kinds of performances. If you stop looking for the Indian in Redface, what do you start looking for? And how do you bring those sort of translatable skills from your practice as an artist or an audience member to other kinds of performance histories? And so Hinoshi Inla talks through ways for centuries how Indigenous performers have utilized performance and theater to their own ends: aesthetic, political, personal,